Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining today. We're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a lot to cover and only about 45 minutes, so we're going to jump right in. So thank you for joining our special webinar, How IT Will Shape the Future of Workplaces. Let me go ahead and quickly introduce myself. My name is David Politis. I'm the founder and CEO at BetterCloud. For those of you who don't know BetterCloud, we are the leading SaaS ops platform. Our platform allows IT to discover, manage, and secure their SaaS applications. My whole career has been spent in SaaS in one way or another, actually before SaaS was even a term or cloud was a term people were using. And so I've seen this, I've seen the evolution, I've seen how SaaS applications have been adopted, the speed of adoption, the type of adoption, the value that they can bring into businesses. And I'm really excited about what we're talking about here today because we're really talking about the future and trying to project out what's going to happen as we look forward in the coming months, years. So with me today, I'm really excited. I've got Bart, who's the CTO of Dropbox. I'm really excited. I'm actually going to let him introduce himself, and then we'll jump in. So Bart, please go ahead.
Hey, David, thanks so much for having me here. This is awesome. I'm excited to do the webinar. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Dropbox, and Dropbox is really leaning into understanding how to make work human, which is like a fascinating thing to consider at this moment in time, especially. I joined Dropbox about 9 months ago. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and the SVP of our platform, kind of our internal and external platform to the world. And prior to this, I spent 5 years at an ed tech startup called Alt School, where we were trying to drive the learner-centric model of progressive education. And kind of before that, I was at Google, where I led the team responsible for the infrastructure behind Google's homepage and search results page. So kind of for the last 20 years of my career, I've been investing in finding ways to take digital solutions and bring them to the world to democratize information, democratize the best education, and to really make work human. And this this moment we sit in right now with coronavirus is this like great opportunity for these things to come together, for us to build out these digital platforms and bring them to the world and actually manage them and help organizations shift into what's happening. So like this is a pretty exciting moment to come together and talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very timely, and we saw the interest. I've gotten a lot of messages on LinkedIn when I posted it that people are really excited to hear about this. That people are thinking about this right now. So by the way, for everyone's information, Bart and I spoke, and when we thought about the type of webinar we wanted to have, we didn't want to just show you a bunch of slides. I think we have a total of 3 or 4 slides to talk you through, but otherwise we actually want to try something different. We wanted to let you, the audience, pick the topics. And so as we go through today's webinar, we're just going to put up a set of topics and poll you and see what you want us to talk about. And then we haven't prepared on any of these specific topics. We're just going to discuss them. And we're hoping that it's going to be more engaging. We've all been to who knows how many virtual events recently, and we wanted to do something a little bit different. So we're going to jump into some slides. If you have questions as we go, you can ask them in the GoToWebinar app. That's in the top right corner there. You should have a questions box that you can type in questions. We'll be looking at them throughout. We also have a Q&A section at the end. So with that, we're gonna jump right in. Again, only a couple slides, and then we'll get to the discussion. So I think we can all agree the IT world is changing faster than anyone expected. It's been changing at this amazing pace, but really what's happened in the last, in my view, 4, 5, 6 months, really since we've been forced everyone's been forced to work from home, since shelter in place, since COVID, it has accelerated, really 3 years of digital transformation, of changing how we work. It's accelerated that and put that into a 3-4 month window. And IT is really at the center of that and being faced with a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities, and that's really what we want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an overstatement to say that the world of work has been turned upside down. I mean, David, I'm sure you went through this, but back in early March, we had to make an almost overnight decision to send everyone to work from home. And prior to that, we didn't really know whether or not working from home or, as I think the Canadian government said, you're not working from home, you're at home sheltering from a global pandemic and trying to work. And so the question is, how do you help people really be effective working under these tough conditions? And we had always kind of theorized that, like, hey, we could be a virtual first, remote first type company. We could take advantage of the broader, talent pool. But we, like many companies, did not have the conviction to kind of lean into this space. And I really like the way Drew put it. Coronavirus helped us move through a one-way door. And we're not really turning back. The world is not turning back from this. Even if we went back to work now in offices, we would still know that this is a possibility and that we can be effective in it. And that instead of meeting in person, we can do webinars. We can, build relationships. We can have a very kind of effective, healthy, productive work environment. And so this shift to remote work has increased the importance of end user productivity and has increased the focus on end user productivity. So I would say the most central principle when designing and thinking through remote work strategy is, how are we going to help this end user be more productive? And one of the areas that Dropbox has been invested in this, and if you go to the next slide, is the idea of creating these rich and productive digital workspaces that will become focal points in how we work together in the future. So what we've seen is the institutional reliance on physical workspaces has plummeted because we don't have access to them. I mean, this webinar is a digital workspace. We can effectively come together, share ideas, and be really effective and productive in a digital workspace. And so now we're learning how to make these digital workspaces structural, and our reliance on them is beginning to skyrocket. So, the question that we're asking ourselves is, what are the experiences and tools we want to bring together so work can really transcend the physical space? Now, I fundamentally believe that as humans, we're really social, and we thrive in seeing each other in the flesh and sharing the experience and being in a physical space. So the digital workspace has to clear a really high bar to actually enable the same level of human connection and productivity. And so it's something that we're not just, it's just not going to happen. We need to focus on it. So I look at this and I think that this world shift has created a really unique opportunity for all of us to explore ideas and solutions. And I'm excited about what Dropbox is doing. I'm excited about what BetterCloud is doing and many other companies that are contributing to this overall effort. I think there's a real opportunity for us.
And, I think at the center of this, to everything Bart just said, I couldn't agree with that more. This is, we're going to have to change. And IT is really at the center of this. I mean, when you think about what has happened, and I speak to so many of our customers on a regular basis, all these IT professionals in all kinds of industries all over the world, and they have been thrown into the spotlight. I mean, they have been thrown into the deep end of being asked by their leaders, by the boards of their companies, you have to create this digital workspace, and you have to, how do we do it, and how do we handle this new normal that we're living in? And it's all about driving the end user productivity, enabling the users, but at the same time you have to do it in a secure way. And I've said this before for people who've joined our webinars in the past. There was one of our customers said something great. She said, what we need to do is create the most secure paths of least resistance for our users. And as you think about that, that's it's such a good statement of, you want your users to do things. They want to do things securely, actually. They don't want to cause problems for the company. They don't want to, but you want to do it in a way where it's frictionless. You want to do it and when you talk about the digital workspace, it's a completely new paradigm. So that we're going to be talking about all these subjects today. And again, we want to put it to you to figure out what you want to hear us really dig into more, where you want us to spend our time. So the first question here is, what you'll see here is, what end user productivity and collaboration topic do you want us to dig into? And here are the three answers. And I'm going to put this poll up on the screen for you to answer. But before I do, maybe Bart, if you could just clarify, we've got that chili pepper there for this answer C. That was your idea, so I'd love for you to share with everyone what that's about.
Yeah, this is something I picked up at Dropbox. You know, like part of, I think, making work human is to really like actually engage in the real dialogue when sometimes, you know, it's easier to kind of answer the fluffy questions. So, you know, I love that you ran with this idea, David. I think it's great. Like we have this idea that you have some questions that are spicy. You know, you put the spicy questions in and you really try to engage. You know, our values around transparency and integrity mean that like we try to have the real conversation. So, so we've got a question in there with the chili pepper on it, which we thought might be the spiciest of the questions that people might be interested in. But we really encourage you to like, you know, try to ask the real questions and drive the real conversation here.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I love that, the idea of the spicy question. So what you see here, we put up the poll. It's in front of you now. We'll give everyone just a minute or so to answer. And essentially, you know, we're trying to understand the questions here are: how can IT respond to the demand for best of breed applications? Will shadow IT become obsolete? Will there be a long-term reduction in the number of apps being used? Of course, that's something that that we've seen this massive increase in the number of applications. Will we see that number come down? So we're at about well, going fast. Okay, 65% voted so far. So we're gonna let everyone else edit.
Is there a clear winner in there?
You know what? I'll be honest. So I'm gonna So the winner so far, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll, and I'll share the results here with everyone. So you can see the results. I have to be honest with you. I thought the spicy question was gonna win here, but really it's the first one, which is how can IT respond to demand for best of breed apps? So I don't know, you know, Bart, if you want to start there, I'm happy to start. Let me pull back up our slides while one of us is starting. But
yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, you know, the world kind of moves between this like bundling and unbundling model back and forth and back and forth. And you know, first, I feel like there's this desire from an IT perspective to like go out and build, as you said, David, that like low friction, high value, highly secure model, which generally results in like some level of centralized control over the suites that you have kind of in-house. And that makes it so much easier for IT to basically provide a better and better experience for the user. But then very often you find that those suites don't always have the actual best options available. And so then you start seeing this shift towards like adding on extra things, which, you know, can result in some shadow IT, it can result in some fragmentation, it can result in security issues. So I think it's actually really important to figure out, you know, a kind of a unified IT response that actually supports the demand for best of breed apps to drive the business, but still provides a way to have kind of like a clear governance model. And frankly, David, when I was using, you know, BetterCloud as I was operating my own startup, like I found the way that we were able to use BetterCloud to actually do governance on top of our suites as well as integrate some of the best of breed apps was a really valuable tool, because I needed that, like, I needed to enable my team to be successful, but I needed to have some top-down way of saying, but are they like leaking IP? Are they like following the rules? I mean, for an educational institution, we had very, very high bar. So I mean, I do think that like this is an emerging problem. I think it's really, really important. And I think IT's response to it is really, really important.
yeah, I mean, what I see, I agree with all of that, and I think that IT needs to be approachable. I guess I would start with that, which is instead of people fearing IT or trying to go behind IT's back to deploy these different, they're going to get deployed. I mean, I think you said it, Art, correctly, but regardless, the best people now know where to go get the best products to do their job, and they're going to do that because they want to do a good job. They want to use the product that they used at their previous company. They want to use the product that everyone else is using. They want to use the product that has a much better UI than the thing that's in the suite. They want to use, so they're going to do that. And the key, in my view, is for IT, and the companies I've seen do this really well, is to your point, create a policy, create a structure where end users can bring those applications to IT and can talk to IT and say, hey, I want to use this application. How can I integrate it with this other application that we're using? And IT has to have a process. We heard a long time ago, one of our most forward-thinking customers, they had created App Review Wednesday. And I think it was App Review Wednesday or App Review Friday. And essentially, their users could come to the IT team and present applications that they felt other people in the organization would get benefit from using. And it's things like that, being approachable and having those conversations. So I think it's acknowledging that this is going to happen. This is where I feel like shadow IT, it's essentially going away, because the idea of locking this stuff down, I think we've passed that point. I think. I don't know what what do you think? Like, are you seeing that? I guess you're probably seeing that firsthand
Totally.
in Dropbox, right? Because all the users want to use Dropbox, and
your employees need to move at the speed of your business, right? And IT cannot be a blocker, because if IT is a blocker and the business demands it, they are kind of forced to go around IT, which then creates the fragmentation problem you're trying to avoid in the first place. So I really do think like a strong IT program needs to be very proactive and responsive, but also needs to take into account, the values of the company. So, our number one value is to be worthy of trust. And so one of the first things we do is we do a security audit on these tools. And sometimes regretfully, we have to tell people, hey, you can't use this tool, but we tell them why. The security vulnerability or the security risk of the data that would flow out to that service is too high, and it's against our values. But within our values, we do our absolute best to give our employees the best tools. And then we, try to get out in front of the governance and the policies so that we can make sure that users are not, our teams are not accidentally doing something against our values. Because I don't think anyone wants to do anything wrong. They're just trying to get their job done. And they really need to have IT as a kind of proactive, responsive partner in this effort. And when that path works really well, I do think you don't see a proliferation of shadow IT, because I think people see IT as the person who's going to help them get their job done, as opposed to the person who's saying, no, I'm not going to let you do what you want. So really getting to the why of what we do was really important for us, and starting from those values and then working our way through the process, I think helped all of our employees, when they can't have a tool that they want, to actually accept that and not try to go around IT to get it anyway.
So I agree with that completely again, and I think it's a really I've seen this even internally at BetterCloud. When you talk about kind of how you run things at Dropbox internally at BetterCloud, our IT team is increasingly more and more in front of our users and just spending more time with the users. And it's also that again, it's about the education. What I find at BetterCloud, and we have, I don't know how many applications, I think we have 150 SaaS applications we use at the company. And sometimes I talk to people, I say, why do you use that application? They say, well, because we didn't have anything that did that. In reality, 3 other people had already used that, and so it had already used that application or a different application that does the same thing. And I think there's education to this. But look, best of breed is here to stay. There is no way, I don't see any way where people go back to using just the suite, because in reality, the suites are just not the individual pieces that make it up. There's usually a really strong piece of the suite, and then there's less and less strong pieces, that are just bundled in. And I don't think people want to use products like that anymore.
Yeah, and David, you probably have a great perspective on this. One of the things that we're seeing is kind of planetary model, where we have a couple of cornerstone suites that we use for different parts of the systems, like Oracle or Marketo and G Suite to kind of anchor different like functions. And then around those, each of them has their own kind of constellation of best of breed apps they integrate with. And then, you kind of mapping it out, and you're trying to figure out, okay, if you're kind of in this place, here's at least a menu of things, to your education point, of things that we already have. So see if you can use one of those first. And if you can't, then let's start exploring other options. But at least starting from that place means that from an IT perspective, you're not perpetually chasing after teams, trying to get them to like change the way they operate, because once a team starts to use a product, it's doubly hard to like bring them back off of that, migrate the data they just created into a new system. So getting your education point is so key. Getting to people before they just kind of run out and start putting data into a new system, just getting that moment and saying, hey, here's everything we have today, work with us to figure out whether or not we need something new. That's super important. And you really need a holistic overview. I'm sure you see this like from the BetterCloud perspective over and over and over again.
100%. That's actually, so the constellation, I don't think I've ever heard that way of describing it is perfect. I mean, that is, if you map people's integrations, you see that there's these big, pillars, if you will, or these main, kind of planets that, and everything else is revolving around them. And it's really understanding, even for some companies, they've put in rules where we're not going to buy this thing unless it integrates into one of our main pillar applications, because otherwise you're creating more disjointed work. So anyway, let's keep going, because otherwise, like we talked about before we got started.
We talked about this one forever. I know.
Let's go to the next question here. Okay, so what physical and digital workspace topic do you want to hear about? So one of them, what are the pros and cons of remote work versus office work? Which SaaS apps are now more crucial for digital workspaces? And then what will SaaS be replaced by next? I'm sorry I didn't show it to you, but the last question is where the chili pepper was, the spicy question. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're at 38% voted.
We're trying to predict what people will find spicy, and we're finding out actually that we're learning a little bit about our audience as we go through this.
That's exactly right. I like this. I like.
You gotta tell what David and I think is spicy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about what SaaS can be replaced. I'd like the answer actually to that myself. Okay, we're at 70% here, so I'll let a couple. It's very close. I'll just tell you, it's very close. So a couple votes are gonna throw this over the. It's too close to call. Okay, maybe we may have to talk about two items. So let me share the results here. Okay, so.
That is cool.
Very close. It was going back and forth between these two. So maybe I don't know where we want to start, Bart. I think.
Well, why don't we try to split the time? Why don't we start with which SaaS apps are now more crucial for digital workspaces?
Sure. Let's start. You want to start there?
Yeah. Just as I think about that. I think back to what we were talking about before, like just the value of being able to actually continue to be productive under the conditions we're in now. I love the kind of humanist perspective of saying, hey, we're all in this together. We're all dealing with this pandemic. We're all coping the best we can, but we are trying to continue to be productive. We're trying to continue to have human connection and work together. So frankly, like SaaS apps that maintain that connection for us, the things that actually kind of incorporate the parts of work that really make it human are becoming more and more important. So I think you're seeing companies like Miro take off. Miro does like collaborative digital whiteboarding. And frankly, in an office setup, like you have a whiteboard, right? You can like my practice is to like draw on the whiteboard and then take a photo of it. And then I can search for whiteboards in any of my photo collection apps, and it brings up all my old whiteboard photos. But that's like an in-person digital collaboration model. I mean, the tools that actually start approximating that are going to become crucial just to get 80% of the way there. I mean, frankly, like some of the digital webcam tools let you just draw on the screen now and let you annotate. And I find that so useful because there's a moment where I just want to be like, stop, like I'm pointing at something, but you can't see what I'm pointing at. I'm just going to circle it on the screen for a second. And so like breaking down some of those walls that we've kind of traditionally had around how we think about video conferencing and making those things back and forth more collaborative are going to be crucial. I think the more you can read human expression on people's faces, the more that you have like good high quality audio, the more you reduce that like momentary lag. Like in this moment, I'm looking at your face, David, but probably from the camera, it looks like I'm not, like right now I'm looking at the camera, but I'm not looking at your face. So when I talk to you, I'm looking at your face, but you probably feel like, why is Bart looking off in this weird direction? You have no idea how my machine is configured. So more that we can like really work on that human connection, and the more that SaaS tools foster that collaboration, I think we have this unique moment for all of those tools, right? This is why Zoom's taking off now. This is why companies like Miro are taking off now, because you look at this and you're like, those things are obviously crucial for maintaining continuity as we go through this space. You know, what would be interesting for me would be to hear your perspective on how you've seen like the curve bend as we've gone through the past 4 months, because I'm sure from like the BetterCloud central place, you've seen a ton of this.
Yeah, I mean, so for us, it's the obvious statement here of the video conferencing, the Zooms, you know, the Slacks, the whiteboarding interest. Well, so let me start there. I mean, for us, again, what I'm seeing, Zoom has gone from our number kind of 10, call it most popular integration, to probably number 2 or number 3 behind Google, Slack, Office, around Office 365. So we're talking about, I mean, Zoom has taken off in the last 4 months, and I have to say that we were really we were Zoom users, but we became such heavy Zoom users once we had to shelter in place, because we moved our all hands meetings to twice a week versus once a month. We just, the number of meetings we're doing has doubled. I mean, over Zoom, or tripled. And so I think that's the obvious stuff. Slack, for the companies that weren't really using Slack before, I think things like the whiteboarding applications, the applications where you can improve audio or video. I mean, all those things. I mean, the whiteboarding is really interesting. I have heard more customers in the last 2 weeks talk about whiteboarding, virtual whiteboarding, than I've heard ever before, frankly. And I have thought about it more in the last month or so, because I think it's that quote from Drew of we went through this one-way door is so true. And I think people maybe only realized that recently. And now that we've gone through that, you have to solve those challenges. So I think we're going to see things like whiteboarding, virtual whiteboarding, which honestly we've never used at BetterCloud, is becoming so important now, because you don't have to mimic all the same experiences of being in person, but I don't know how to brainstorm without a whiteboard. I honestly don't know how to do that. And so I think we're going to see like this next wave of applications. They're going to come out to solve some of these problems that we just can't even think about today. So let me go to the next question, because we're going to run out of time here. Go ahead.
One thing I would just quickly say on that is, like, this is the reason why I was attracted to Dropbox in the first place, because we've been building out a virtual space, but the need for it was much lower last year. The need for it has gone up. And so it's like, if you and I were sitting in a room and we were like hanging out, drawing stuff on boards and leaving notes for ourselves for tomorrow and the day after, and you had this like persistence model, it would be so much easier to maintain all this context and maintain all this state. Like, your drawings on the whiteboard, you write "do not erase" next to it, and then you have it there for a week, you have it there for a month. You can enter this space and think about things that way. I do think this stuff is really coming to the forefront.
Yeah, I agree. So the other question was, what will SaaS be replaced by next? I'll say, from my perspective, when I saw us, we were talking about putting this question in here, people have talked about a whole variety of technologies that are going to come next. I think we are so far away. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we are so far away from that happening. And the reason I say that is because the adoption of SaaS only now has really started to reach critical mass. And that's, when you think about that, how long, I mean, the life cycle of SaaS, if you think about some of the banks are rolling out all these SaaS products we just talked about, Dropbox and Zoom and Slack and G Suite and Office 365. I mean, when you think about a bank, they're going to make a decision now that's going to last 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, they're not going to be replacing. I mean, it takes them 5 years to put this stuff in. So when you think about that, now that it's become just the main, like, this is the de facto, this is how we're going to work. I mean, I know you're more of a technologist than I am. You probably have some ideas about what's going to replace SaaS, but for me, I think it's so far out. I really believe it's just in another kind of generation of workers, because at this point we've only really scratched the surface, frankly, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing considering how ubiquitous SaaS is, that like it didn't really exist in this form 10 years ago. It's kind of crazy like how fast this has happened. I mean, if you reflect like the ability to get like consumer packaged goods and commoditized goods, like 30 years ago, like the ability that we can just like order stuff on Amazon and have them show up in our door the next day is like mind blowing, but that exists today. It's like you have access to the entire industrial complex to get the widget that you want delivered on your door. And then SaaS was really basically saying you have access to all the stuff that your team might build. You can simply go get it as a service and you get the economy of scale. Like when I was at Google and we were building out search itself required ultimately GCP. And being able to sell GCP as like itself as a service makes, you know, the kind of Amazon to AWS model, the search to GCP model. So really my question is, what is the thing that sits above them, right? And so I don't know when it comes, but I would say, I'll go out on a limb and I'll plant a flag on saying it's going to be intelligence as a service, right? It's like not just getting the results of the industrial complex. It's not just getting the results of the digital services people provide. It's actually getting intelligence on demand. It's what is the decision? What is the key insight from all this data? You know, how can I download a module to drive a car or fly a helicopter? You know, it's like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. It's like, how do I get the intelligence I need when I need it, but not have to have it all the time, right? Without having to build out these capabilities. Wouldn't it be amazing if like you and I hopped in a plane and flew to Japan and suddenly we could speak Japanese, right? Like intelligence, I think as a service is that next level. It'll take a long time to get here, but that's okay. I mean, it's, you know what they say, the future is here, it's just unevenly distributed, right? We kind of have intelligence as a service in like self-driving cars, but it's not everywhere and it's not fully reliable. But I think this is coming. I think the ability to say like, okay, I'm faced with this problem. Let me download the intelligent module, give it all this data and have it just give me the best approximation answer and move on so that I don't have to become a specialist in this and I don't have to build out that capability. I mean, what an awesome world that would be, right? I mean, it might not be great for our species in some ways. Like, it might, exactly. I don't know.
This is exactly why we have you here today. This is why I was so excited, because I knew you'd come out with something like that. You know, like that. Yeah, I mean, it's not crazy to think, you know, again, the question is when, but and to your point, it kind of sits on top of SaaS. I think, anyway, that I love that answer. Okay, let's go to the next, question here. And we're getting some questions. By the way, if you have questions, please go ahead and ask them. And it looks like I'm keeping us on time, so we will get to the point where we can take some questions. So, what future of IT kind of teams? So, if you think about IT teams and what does the future look like for you? What do you want to us to talk about? How much more will IT be involved in the buying cycle of these SaaS products? How's IT seat at the table evolving? Will a fully digital workplace make IT obsolete? That one is the spicy question. So I'll let everyone go ahead and answer here. Again, if you're sitting and listening in the background, you know, come up. We're at 45% voted, so I think we're making good progress. Okay, this one is also close between number 2 and 3. So if you have an opinion, now is a good time to voice it here. Okay, one of them is taking away. Okay, we're at 75%. Great. Let's go ahead and share that. So here we go. So the one that everyone wants to talk about is how is IT seat at the table evolving? So let me get the results. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'll speak. I can start on this one, Bart. You know, for me, I said this before. I think IT's seat at the table, it's becoming much more important because there's no. I mean, who's talking about their physical workplaces, their workspaces anymore? No one's really. Again, I'm just, this is based on conversations I'm having with people, based on conversations at BetterCloud. It's all about the technology that we're using, and it's all about this front end technology that people are using to do their work. And so, who do you go to for that? That is IT. I mean, IT, their skill set, their knowledge base, their experience is arguably more critical than ever right now. I think that IT is being asked to really make much more business impacting type decisions about how a business is really going to run. I mean, I see that we're going to our IT team more often to talk to them about various decisions, whether it be different technologies that we use, whether it be how we want to train our employees when they get onboarded, whether it be, I mean, we're thinking about things through more. I mean, technology is becoming even more core to how we do things on a day-to-day basis, and IT needs to be involved in that. And so I think that the seat at the table is becoming bigger and more important. What I think, and I've said this so many times, and I've heard CIOs share this with our community before, which is, with that though, IT has to evolve their skill sets, because for IT, traditionally they maybe haven't had that seat at all the way at the board table or all the way. And now, I mean, literally front and center is our company going to thrive or die, and essentially comes down to how the organization is going to work in this digital workspace, this digital world. And IT is who else is at the center of that. So I think it's IT's kind of opportunity. I've been saying it's kind of the golden age of IT, frankly. And you don't want to be. I mean, this is due to a worldwide crisis, but at the same time, this is going to change the view of IT, in my opinion. And I think, again, for you, Bart, based on our conversations in the past, it feels like it's just IT is even getting brought into discussions and decision making in purchasing Dropbox, purchasing Salesforce, purchasing, where IT was not having those conversations, and now IT is really being brought into all those conversations, and that shows the importance of IT and how important their opinion is, their experience. So that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the world is moving towards digital knowledge workers. I mean, I think historically, like IT is like, you have a startup and you hire one guy to administer your laptops, right? And it's all like super reactive. And obviously, like, organizations who manage the shift to working from home were heavily reliant on a really well-functioning IT team. Like, having IT be an afterthought is kind of a recipe for your whole corporate platform of like all the things you need to do for like to have a business. For like you to even have this conversation requires so much work behind the scenes from massive teams, and like letting those teams be in a reactive mode is not at all going to accelerate your business. You need your IT teams to be proactively working with the marketing team and the sales team and the engineering team to figure out, like, how do we operate our corporate platform efficiently? But I think beyond that, what's exciting is like, we're a company that consumes IT, but also produces IT, right? So like, our value add is taking existing technologies, whether they be like low-level components that we're like building code on top of, or existing services, and tying them together to form an offering, right? So like, why not? You always have this decision on, okay, I'm building a product and it requires 10 capabilities. I don't need to build all those capabilities. I can work with my IT team, and they can be producing governed SaaS products into our production stack for us to accelerate the business. I think we leave a lot on the table by not incorporating IT's perspective and their capabilities into the process. I mean, this is certainly a direction we're moving in at Dropbox, where we're more and more trying to consider, okay, as we go along down this route of building things, which are the things that we build ourselves, which are the things that we think about acquiring, which are the things that we work with our IT teams to do a managed, thoughtful, strategic, SaaS engagement, such that we still get the same capability, but we get it in an incredibly effective way. And the only way to do that is to have a strong voice of IT at the table, in every conversation so that you have the benefit of it up front. You're not finding out after the fact, oh man, we really could have done better if we had just kind of, if we hadn't built this ourselves, if we had just kind of worked with a vendor who could provide us not only something that's great, but is also tied into the rest of the constellation of services that you need internally and externally, and get the buying power of having it both for your company as well as for your product offering. Like, the synergy there is amazing. I think it's totally worth investing in.
Yep, I fully agree. Okay, with our time, we're at 2:41, so we're going to get to questions. Again, there are a bunch of questions, so we are going to get to the questions, or try to. Before we do, so as you're asking questions, I just wanted to make everyone aware that we have partnered with Dropbox. We launched this partnership late last year, and our goal, both companies, I mean, here today, but if you know either of our companies, we are driving this move to the digital workspace. We've been driving this move to SaaS for years. I mean, we've been championing this for years. And so we came together and put together an offering where your users can use the application they want with Dropbox. You can adopt Dropbox, roll it out org-wide, do all of those things, and still have the controls and the automation around admin, security, workflows, all of that with BetterCloud combined. We've built a really deep integration between the two, and the name of the offering is Advanced Team and Content Controls. And so that's an add-on that you can get from Dropbox. I just wanted to make everyone aware. So if you are a Dropbox customer and you're interested in that, you can reach out to your Dropbox rep. You can reach out to BetterCloud, and we'll help you get that. So let me go to the first question. I'm going to ask you this first question here, Bart. So there's a question around SaaS costs. SaaS costs are exploding. Mm-hmm. So an app that could cost like an app that pretty much is very, very small, that does very little in your environment, can cost $10 per user per month, $120 per user per year. So do you see that these costs are just going to naturally be accounted for in like IT budgets? Are we just going to assume that SaaS costs are going to continue to go up and that's just going to get accounted for in companies? Or do you think that the SaaS market, the question is, do you think the SaaS market's going to stabilize and bring some of these costs down over time? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we're going through a company strategy and we're leading into, annual planning. So budgets are something that we're considering, now. I mean, I think you have to look at the broader arc of what happens. I mean, SaaS companies produce a product or a service, and then the service has a certain amount of value and has a certain amount of cost. And very often they're kind of incrementally adding more value to the service, and then they're kind of incrementally pushing the costs up, and so to a certain extent, like, you get more of an efficiency of scale, but then you can demand more revenue if you add more value. So it's always this kind of like moving target in terms of like cost and value. And then coming in from the side is this whole bundling versus unbundling swing, which kind of swings back and forth. So I think at every moment, well, not every moment, that's an exaggeration, but just on a periodic basis, I do think it's important for you to take a step back, look at the big picture, and say, okay, if we're in this kind of planetary model where we have these constellations of services around, like big kind of anchor vendors, where are we seeing that the value actually makes sense for the cost, and where do we feel like the value might be better shifted somewhere else? And I think IT, decision makers are always going to have to make this decision every time. And I think it's healthy for the market. I think the market should move towards providing a efficient value to end users, because that's what steers the market. I don't think that it makes sense to invest in things that are not increasing in value over time. And that's why I think you see a little bit of a gravitational pull towards these big suites, because they're easier, they have better economy of scale, and so you tend to see them starting to get more absorbed. But I think the real standout players who differentiate themselves either by values or execution, reliability, cost, those I believe will still continue because they have a value proposition that's really clear to the users, and the users are very much attached to them. So I think there's always this tension, and I think the tension is healthy, and I think it'll continue to exist. I mean, at Dropbox, we almost on a quarterly cycle are doing a strategic look ahead to figure out where do we want to start thinking about consolidating these things, and where do we want to let them continue to be independent because the value proposition is so high. And I think that's the responsible thing for ITTMs to do.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Let me go to the next one. This is a really good one. So I'm still thinking about the what's after SaaS. This is the question. I think perhaps interoperability between the suites and the best of breed and the suites is going to be more and more in demand. The question is, won't email continue to beat Slack and Teams and chat until they all work seamlessly? And I think that is really interesting. I think Bart and I have had this conversation at length, because this is essentially where Dropbox has really come in with the new offering that they launched last year around centralizing and bringing all these suites and all these different applications into the same container, essentially. And Bart, you can speak more about it for those that don't know, but to me, I agree with that. That's a very interesting statement. I don't know that the suites are going to build deep interoperability between the suites. Like I mean, I don't know. You worked at Google, Bart, so you have better sense of that. Like, I think there's always going to be this co-opetition, but not to the level of deep kind of experiential integration. But it's going to take someone is going to do it. Someone is going to create that because it's needed. So anyway, I don't know, Bart, if you want to touch on that, because I
mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you know, like the kind of like intelligence thing is way out there, but like integration really and interoperability really speaks to how do you build a robust ecosystem of the things that you need such that they all operate together. And adding something new or adding value to one is adding incremental value to all. There's no world where that does not continue, right? I think that more and more, like we're seeing, the more that users add integrations to Dropbox, the more likely they are to actually like thrive on our product, because they're getting incremental value from everything they add. So we're pushing to add more interoperability and more integrations because we clearly see that's where the market is going. I absolutely agree with the question and the premise of the question. I think this is increasingly important, and I do think we're going to see more and more of that over time.
Okay, let me see the next one. So organizationally, where do you think IT should be placed to be most effective? Seems like the high-level structure of teams has a big impact on how effective IT teams can be. So is it a CIO versus CTO, for example? Any thoughts on that? I have some thoughts on that as well, but what do you think, Bart? Where does IT belong, basically?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about how it is at Dropbox. You know, the other large player I worked at for a long time, Google, had a slightly different structure. And I think that just kind of underscores that you can be successful with different motions. But, you know, we have an amazing CIO, Soli Veu, who reports up to me. And one of the things that I think about as I'm building out a platform for our organization is the value of that corporate platform, which sits at kind of the bottom of the pyramid, and how it collaborates to build out our product offering that we take at the top of the pyramid. And I find that like having, you know, our product platform leaders, as well as our infrastructure platform leaders, as well as kind of our corporate platform leaders in the form of like our CIO and ITS, having them work closely together to figure out how best to solve all of our collective problems, I believe is the correct long-term approach. Like, I believe you have to bring these leaders together and have an open dialogue and explore the trade-offs, because there's never really like a moment in time. It's really, what arc are you on, and how are you getting these things to be more and more collaborative and more efficient, such that they add value to each other. So I firmly believe that like wherever in the organization is the right place to bring those leaders together to have the conversation is the right place for IT to sit. And for us, it's in my organization, you know, where I bring my key leaders together, including the CIO, to have those conversations.
I think that's right. I would actually say, you know, what I've learned, just generally, whether it's role or IT or a different role, like, I think it depends on the organization, it depends on the leaders, and I don't know that there's always a right answer, but it has to be a person who cares, you know, who who sees the value of IT, who understands why IT should be at the table. What Bart literally just said, you need a leader like that who says this needs to belong here because this needs to be integrated into everything else. And so the key is who that leader is, in my opinion, and that's going to differ depending on the organization. There are many different kinds of CTOs. There's many different kinds of CIOs. There's many. So I think it depends on the organization. But to that, I'm going to read another question. I know we've run out of time to the 45 minutes, but we'll go with a couple more here because I think this one is really important. I have a couple of ideas, but hopefully Bart will have some more here. So you talked about the evolving role of IT, which seems very clear to me, but it's not always clear to leadership. Do you have any tips for how to help leadership understand the role IT can and should play? So many businesses do not give IT a seat at the decision-making table, and it's difficult it's impossible to have an impact if IT doesn't have a seat at the table. So some tips or thoughts about that. You know, what I've seen, and I've heard this from CIOs, actually at a conference that we had a couple of years ago, there was a CIO who presented and shared some of their thoughts about getting a seat at the table, being strategic. And one of the things that I see is really understanding the business goals, the business initiatives, the KPIs, the OKRs, whatever it is, really understanding like these are the most important things to this business. Understanding those, I'm saying from an IT perspective, understanding those, taking those away, and mapping IT projects, IT initiatives, IT ideas, IT spend to those business goals. But I mean, really showing how IT can impact. For example, I saw an example from Intel a while ago where the Intel essentially started producing quarterly reports because everyone said IT at Intel doesn't do anything, internal IT, blah, blah. They started creating these internal reports every quarter to show this is how we've impacted the business. Because we had 99.99999% uptime on our phone system, again, go back, a decade, because of that, our sales were impacted by X amount, because we had the ability to do XYZ VPN, we were able to do, so they essentially tied all the work that they're doing back to all these different initiatives, back to the goals of the business, and presented that literally quarterly. The presentation, I have to find this. It's an amazing thing that they would put out every quarter, and it puts IT. It doesn't happen overnight, especially if the leader doesn't understand the value of IT. But it's like it has to be front and center. It has to tie to the business goals, and it has to be kind of this constant, reminder. So that's at least just one idea. I could probably talk about that subject for a long time as well. But Bart, what do you think about that?
I completely agree with that. I love the idea of transparency and flowing it through the business so you can demonstrate the business value. Because ultimately, you're building a business. You're trying to transact value. You're trying to achieve a goal with your users, right? And so all these things need to flow and be aligned. You don't want IT to sit off in the corner and be an afterthought that where their budget gets slashed because no one pays attention. So I totally agree that strategy of creating visibility is really important. I would suggest also one other thing, which is that leaders listen to their teams, right? Leaders listen to the people right below them who are generating the value for them. And so if those leaders at the level below are saying, I am successful because IT is helping me, then the value of IT flows up through the teams themselves. So one of the things that we've seen that's really helpful is by having our IT team partner very closely with sales and with marketing, with EPD and G&A and finance and legal, and like in all cases, bringing value to those teams vociferously fight for IT to continue to have a budget because slashing IT's budget is harming them, right? And so they become advocates for the value of IT within the business, and it flows with the value and the rhythms of the business, such that IT stops becoming an afterthought in the budgetary process. It starts being like, first and foremost, if we want to achieve this, let's go start by talking to IT and see what they can offer us, right? And then the kind of dynamic starts to flip, where IT start thinking about IT like first in the process as opposed to last, and then the value proposition becomes really, really clear.
I like that. Basically building those other champions for IT within the org It's a good, I like that. Okay, well, we do have some other questions. We've definitely run out of time here. We'll try to go through these, and if we have answers for them, we'll ping you back with answers afterwards. But thank you very much for joining, everyone. And Bart, I really enjoyed this. I feel like we could probably do this for 3 hours. So maybe we'll do it again. But thank you so much for joining today and for all the insights. And again, I think we'll get requests to do this again. So talk soon.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity, David. It's really nice to see you and have a conversation with you. It's been awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.